Hi everyone, Melissa back again with the third and final part of Shirley and Oz Connections. This time we'll focus on Shirley's TV series and the episode that she did based on the Land of Oz. In 1950, Shirley left her film career for good. She married her second husband, Charles Black, but she did return to the screen, to the small screen, that is, in 1958 when she launched her TV series entitled Shirley Temple's Storybook. It was an anthology series that featured adaptations of children's stories. During its second season, it was renamed The Shirley Temple Show, and the premiere episode for that season was The Land of Oz, based somewhat on The Marvelous Land of Oz, the 1904 Oz sequel. Before the episode was planned, Ruth Plumley Thompson is said to have contacted Shirley, and she wanted to interest her in producing some of her Oz stories, in addition to some other stories that she'd written for a children's magazine. We don't know if Shirley ever answered her. We've never found anything to that effect. But later on, when this episode was in its planning stages, Thompson was informed by her Oz book publisher that Shirley could go ahead and produce The Land of Oz free from royalties because it had fallen into public domain. Here we see a publicity still for Shirley's storybook. Next to it, we have Shirley as she's seen introducing the Land of Oz episode. For all of the episodes that she did from both seasons, Shirley would introduce it, and then in some cases, like in the Land of Oz, she would appear as an actress. Here we have a page from the NBC TV publicity book for the Shirley Temple Show with contemporary artwork for the main Oz characters. Let's take a look at the cast of The Land of Oz. Of course, we have Shirley. Shirley played a dual role. She played Princess Ozma, and in the episode, Princess Ozma appears as the princess in the beginning and the end. In the middle of the story, after she has a spell cast on her by Mombi the Witch, she appears as Tip. The other players were some familiar characters. We have the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, both looking much like their MGM counterparts. The Scarecrow was played by Ben Blue, the Tin Woodman by Gil Lamb. Here we have Glinda the Good, who looks very much like Billy Burke did in 1939. She is played by Frances Bergen. Peeking out from the back, we have Sterling Holloway. Can't really see him because, of course, he's under that lovely Pumpkinhead, but he is instantly recognizable when you hear his voice. He, of course, did the voice of such characters as Alice in Wonderland's Cheshire Cat and Winnie the Pooh. The incomparable Agnes Moorehead played Mombi the Witch, and the equally incomparable actor Jonathan Winters played Lord Nicodick. Lord Nicodick in this episode had a butler named Graves. Graves was played by Arthur Treacher. Arthur Treacher and Shirley were old friends at this point, he having played alongside her in some of her most famous childhood films, including The Little Princess, made in 1939. Let's talk a minute about some of the people behind the scenes of The Land of Oz. It was written, adapted for TV from the book by Frank Gabrielson, who is known, among other things, as having written for Alfred Hitchcock Presents. It was produced by William Asher of Bewitched, and of course, Agnes Moorehead would go on to be another type of witch, Endora, in that beloved TV show. The makeup was by John Chambers. I believe this was early in his career. He would go on to make some iconic makeup or create iconic makeup, including Star Trek's Spock and those pointy ears, and all the prosthetics used in Planet of the Apes. The costumes were done by Ben Carlton, who did most of the costumes on Shirley's storybook series. The costumes for the Tin Man and the Scarecrow were certainly inspired by that of the Wizard of Oz. Those costumes, of course, originally done by Adrian. For Jack Pumpkinhead, who, of course, was not a character in the 1939 movie, the costumer didn't do too badly. In the book, Jack is wearing purple trousers, a red shirt, and a pink and white dotted vest. Well, you can see that the colors are somewhat off, but I think you got the general idea. In this illustration, Jack has a flowing scarf, whereas the Jack that appeared on TV had somewhat more of a bow tie, but I still think it's pretty spot on. Tip in the illustration wears a different type of hat than Shirley chose to sport, but the costume with the breeches and the little jacket looks fairly similar. Shirley went for the more feminine hairstyle of the Dutch bob, and I think we'll forgive her for that because she is, of course, Shirley Temple. At least she didn't wear curls. One of the most memorable, if you will, characters from the Land of Oz is the Sawhorse. The Sawhorse in Shirley's episode was voiced by Mel Blanc. He, of course, was known for doing the voices of the Looney Tune characters and Barney Rubble of the Flintstones and many more. Here we have a screenshot of the Sawhorse right before Tip, as played by Shirley, is going to sprinkle the powder of life on him. Below, we have a rare frame from a contact sheet of production photos. This time, Tip is wearing just her hat. The rest of her clothing look like her everyday clothes. And we have Sterling Holloway, who is Son's costume. And we can really see him now. After the episode was filmed, Shirley took home the Sawhorse. And here we have a photo of her 3 children, Susan and Lori and Charlie, playing with the Sawhorse, with Shirley on the back as well. The Sawhorse was not the only character to come home with Shirley after the Land of Oz was wrapped. Here we have the Gump. In 2015, when Shirley's items were auctioned off at the second auction, the Gump appeared. And I had a chance to talk with Shirley's son, pictured here as a teenager, Charlie, who said that they referred to the Gump as Gumpus Ozus, and he lived in their family room. You can see a little bit of it over here in this photo and a bit more of it over here. It was purchased at that auction by a private collector who I believe is in Georgia now. In Shirley's version of The Land of Oz, Gumpus Ozus, or the Gump, was voiced by Maurice Dallimore. Here we have an ad for, or a newspaper clipping for the Shirley Temple version of The Land of Oz. It highlights some of the people who were in it and gives a little bit of a synopsis. Rather than watching that, instead we'll watch a clip to give you a bit of the flavor of what Shirley Temple's version of The Land of Oz was. Prior to the episode airing, the write-up stressed that this was a sequel to the famous film. At that point, I believe The Wizard of Oz had aired on TV at least twice, and of course, viewers were familiar with that. They wanted people not to mistake this as a new Wizard of Oz, and they wanted to remind people that Dorothy would not appear in this show. Below, we have a picture of Agnes Moorehead. Oops. Bear with me a moment. And thank you. And Agnes Moorehead, of course, in this episode was Mombi the witch. She was quite a good witch, and, well, quite a good bad witch, because she appeared again in another episode of Shirley Temple's storybook as the witch in Rapunzel. And this time she looks decidedly like Margaret Hamilton. In one of the trade papers, or one of the newspapers at the time, said this about Shirley's episode of The Land of Oz. Shirley's TV opener, The Land of Oz, was an hour of very pleasant nonsense. I think that was a compliment. If your child did not enjoy it, then he's been ruined by neurotic westerns. That was reported by the New York Herald Tribune on September 25th, 1960. Right, I'm going to play a 3-minute version, a condensed version of The Land of Oz. I found this on YouTube by a YouTuber who goes by the name of Jerry Pizza. Jerry, if you're out there, thank you for posting this. It was very helpful.
King Nick the Wicked. What I'd like to know is...
We have Jonathan Winters and Agnes Moorehead, of course.
As long as I keep the princess, I know your lordship will keep his word about making me the royal witch of Oz. I stole you, princess. You're going to be changed to mine. The instant I touch you with this serpent's plume, you'll forget everything you ever knew. This ought to give old Mombi a fright. Maybe you could do the chores around the place. How would you like to be alive, dearie? Look,
Agnes Moorehead is somewhat of a Cockney Endora.
What cornfield are you from? I'm not a Pumpkinhead. I'm a boy. How's the time for you to help me get out of here? I'll take it back, Wilson, in case you need a boost. Who's Ozma?
Well, she's the ruler of all Oz.
Does she help folks in trouble?
Well, that's her specialty.
Then we'll go see her. Thank you. Oh, it's Mombi and a lot of soldiers. And they're riding on animals of some kind. This is just a song.
That, of course, was the voice of Sterling Holloway. Sounds like the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland and Winnie the Pooh. Now, of course, the production values and special effects are not quite what we're used to today, but for the time and for the medium of TV, not too bad.
I'll be there just as soon as my soldiers batter down your gates and scale your walls, and then the dreadful fun will start. Snick a bit again. It's the Tin Woodman. I knew you were serious. I was telling my friends here that you could let Lord Nick and his whole army single-handedly.
I do enjoy the MGM-like costumes, but I have to admit, watching this, I miss the voices of Jack Haley and Ray Bolger.
I just made the army invisible. That's it. We can't run out. We can't dig out. So we fly out. Easy. There's some sort of thing that wins. You breathe light. Easy. Follow me.
There is the Gump, known to the black children as Gumpus Ozus. And there we have Francis Bergen.
But in time you will certainly be captured. In the meantime, however, I am prepared to make your ultimate punishment much lighter. If you will at once give up to me the person who calls himself Mombi the Witch. By my magic, I have learned that you know the whereabouts of our rightful ruler, Princess Ozma. Just to show you that you can't do anything about it, I'll tell you. The princess.
Some very long fingernails on Mombi.
All your spells are broken, Mombi. Hail, Princess Ozma! And Nick, I condemn you from this day forward to do one good deed every day, and forever after to be known as Lord Nick the Good.
What one of my friends said. This is the end, chaps.
Thank you for stopping by. Before we go, I'd like to give some sincere thanks to Jane Albright, who put all of this together, and to my friend, my customer, and my fact checker, Dave Crufty Kelleher. I wanted to include this photo because it shows in all of its glory the costume that he created for me, the Ozma costume. I also want to thank Rita Dubus and John Fricke. I used their Bomb Bugle articles as terrific resources. The Land of Oz is no longer available in its entirety on YouTube. At one time it was. You can find it on DVD. I get no commission or royalties for this. It's in the Shirley Temple collection. You can stream it. As an entity in and of itself, the Land of Oz, and then you can buy it. I'm sure this is from Amazon because isn't everything from Amazon? And it comes with both the Land of Oz and the Reluctant Dragon. Thank you. Have a great time at To Oz, and I'll see you next time. Bye.